In our previous lecture we introduced the concept of discretization. Let us try to recapitulate it a bit. So, discretization principles. We should remember that this is a generic principle or a collection of generic principles, and it does not specify what is the method. So, it is a common philosophy of all discretization processes for simulation of continuum based equations. So, the first one was divide the domain into a number of discrete subdomains. And each subdomain being characterized by a, or instead of characterized it is better to say represented by a number of discrete points. And once that is done, then you derive algebraic equations from the governing differential equation valid at these discrete points. And then solve the system of algebraic equations to obtain values of the dependent variables at the discrete points. Now, if one follows this particular procedure, then the overall analysis can be thought of as a collection of the following. One is pre-processing, another is solution, and the third one is post-processing. These are the broad steps in the overall analysis. So, in pre-processing what you are doing? You are setting up the problem. So, how do you set up the problem? You set up the geometry, and discretized equations, input data, that means property data as an example, initial condition, boundary condition, etc. So, these are the inputs which are necessary, and once this thing is properly set up, then you basically require to solve algebraic equations. Once these algebraic equations are solved, you get the value of the variable, say temperature or velocity at each and every point, and then post processing is a graphical representation of the obtained results. no matter whatever numerical method we are adopting, the method will go through these steps so long as we are solving the problem in a continuum perspective. We will take up some examples of numerical methods which illustrate these principles, and the first example that we take up is the finite element method. So, let us consider the finite element method. We consider it first because it evolves from the variational formulation that we have considered in some of our previous lectures. So, finite element method, finite element method or FEM. Of course, we can go deeper and deeper into the method, but we have to keep in mind that this is not a course totally dedicated towards finite element method. So, our objective will not be to go into the details of this method, but maybe take up a generic simple example to illustrate the use of this method in perspective of the discretization policy that we have just formulated. So, let us take an example and we will learn this method or the basics of this method through this example. So, example say you are solving a one dimensional steady state heat conduction equation. See, we have considered this as a prototype equation for illustrating many of the principles, and let us say that we do it for illustrating the finite element method itself. Remember that the finite element method can be perceived in many ways, but in one of the ways in which it can be done is that one type of finite element method can be thought of as a discrete version of the Galerkin's method. So, the Galerkin's method, if you recall that we had a trial function same as the weighting function, and we employed that trial function and weighting function over the entire domain. Now, in the discretized version of that, in the finite element method, we will employ that over each of the discrete subdomains in which the domain is decomposed, and each subdomain is called as an element in a finite element method. So, the first step, if you remember, divide the domain into a number of discrete subdomains. So, if it is a 2 dimensional or 3 dimensional problem, you could have subdomains of different shapes, maybe in this way we can go on. This is a 1 dimensional problem. So, here the subdomains are nothing but straight lines. So, you have this as a total domain. Let us say that this, the left hand side is x equal to 0, right hand side is x equal to L, and let us say that the boundary conditions are as follows, that it is insulated at x equal to 0 and temperature is specified at x equal to L. See, we have not yet formally discussed about the different types of boundary conditions. It is very important to discuss about that and how to implement that in a generic situation, and we will come into that issue subsequently. But right now at least these types of boundary conditions we can demarcate as either the essential or the natural boundary conditions, which are very much befitting with the variational formulation. Now, we are interested to solve the temperature distribution within this domain. Let us say this is a rod. Physically the rod is such that its cross sectional area is much smaller than its corresponding axial length, and major temperature variation takes place axially. There is some uniform heat source that is present, which is given by this S. Now, we divide the domain into a number of subdomains. So, let us say that we divide it into 3 subdomains. So, subdomain number 1, subdomain number 2, subdomain number 3. Each subdomain we call as element. So, we have element number 1, element number 2, element number 3. Each element in turn is represented by some discrete points, sets of points. So, these discrete sets of points in the terminology of finite element, these are called as nodes. So, we give the node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. So, we can create a chart of element node connectivity. Remember that it is not necessary that each element will have 2 nodes, each element can have whatever number of nodes, and we will see very soon that more the number of nodes contained by each element, you have higher and higher order approximating polynomial that can be used for interpolating the dependent variable within the element. But obviously more and more number of nodes will mean that you have higher computational expense, because you have to solve for the variable at those nodes. So, there is a sort of compromise that one looks for. Now, you can prepare a chart where for each element you can identify the nodes. So, for element number 1, the first node is 1, the second node is 2. For element number 2, first node is 2, second node is 3. For element number 3, first node is 3 and second node is 4. And each node is having its own coordinate. So, you can use whatever coordinate system you want to specify the coordinate of each node. It is a one dimensional problem. So, although I have given a comma, that is not necessary, you just require one coordinate, one x coordinate, but if it were a 2 dimensional problem, it could have been x comma y, that is why I have put a comma, or maybe a 3 dimensional problem, a third coordinate. But here this comma is not necessary, you just have only one coordinate specifying the location of the point. So, this is a chart which is important, which is like an element node chart, which relates the connectivity of each element with the corresponding nodes. Now, what we will do is we will consider any isolated element. Let us say that we consider an element, this one, where the first node is I and the second node is j. So, we have one element which is starting with node I, ending with node j, and we are interested to write an algebraic equation corresponding to this governing differential equation for that generic element, that is our objective. Let us say that the name of the element is E. So, what we will do, we will start with the basic principle of the Galerkin's method. So, the first step will be to multiply the governing differential equation with a weighting function and then integrating it not now over the whole domain, but over each subdomain, that is over each element, and then sum that effect up over all the elements. So, effectively you are using the Galerkin's method over the entire domain, but it is a discrete summation rather than a continuous integration over the entire domain. So, first you consider the Galerkin's method implemented over each subdomain, then you sum it up over all the subdomains, so that you get the net effect over the total domain, but in a discrete sense, no more in a continuous sense. So, you write d dx of k dt dx plus s, we multiply it by a weighting function dx equal to 0, that is the first step. So, we are using discrete Galerkin's finite element method. There are many different ways by which finite element equations may be derived. So, do not develop a misunderstanding that this is the only way in which it can be done, but this is the discrete Galerkin's method by which we are showing this as an illustration. From x equal to 0 to x equal to L will be the limit of integration. Then what we will do is we will integrate it by parts. So, w will be the first function and the remaining will be the second function. So, w into k dt dx minus integral of the derivative of the first dw dx into integral of the second k dt dx dx. So, that is a straightforward step. We have executed similar step for the variational formulation, but we are just doing it over each element, that is the only difference. So, what will be the difference? Now, the change from the variational formulation is that it will be no more from 0 to L, but from xi to xj, and then this is summed up over all element, that is the conceptual difference. So, what we will do is we will consider first the formulation for each element and then we will sum it up or assemble it up later on. So, it will be from I to j, xi to xj, xi to xj. So, the first difference you follow from the general variational formulation. Then what we will do, we have to now assume a trial function and a weighting function. See, we have reduced the order of the continuity requirement of the trial function by doing the integration by parts. So, the highest order derivative that you require is dt dx. So, a linear function of t as a function of x will do, and a linear function will require two coefficients for its specification. So, if you have a two noded element which we sketched in our figure, with each element has node I and j, then that would be sufficient. But if that was not the case, then you would have required a higher order derivative to specify. Next, what you do, we try to write the corresponding trial and weight function in this particular expression. So, the trial function, so you have two node points where you can specify the variable. So, you can have a trial function t is equal to a0 plus a1x, this is a trial function. Remember, the trial function you are making valid within each element, not a global trial function, but a trial function that is valid over individual elements. So, it is a piecewise linear interpolation that you are considering, so to say, it is not a global single linear interpolation. Now, you have the following information, that at x equal to xi you have t equal to ti, which is an unknown which you intend to find out, and at x equal to xj you have t equal to tj. So, it is physically much more interesting and intuitive if we express a0 and a1 in terms of ti and tj, because those are the unknowns that you need to solve and those directly relate to the physical variable that you are interested in. So, we can write ti is equal to a0 plus a1 xi and tj is equal to a0 plus a1 xj. So, now you can find out a0 and a1. So, for example, a1, if you subtract these two, a1 into xj minus xi is equal to tj minus ti, which means a1 is tj minus ti by xj minus xi, and you can find out a0 from any one of the equations. Say the first equation, it is ti minus a1 xi. So, ti minus tj minus ti by xj minus xi into xi. So, a0 will be ti xj minus T I x I and plus T I x I will cancel. So, minus T j x I by x j minus x I. So, T will be equal to A0, in place of A0 let us write T I x j minus T j x I by x j minus x I plus A1 x I plus T j minus T I by x j minus x I into x I into x, right, not x I. So, you can collect the terms with T I and T j. So, T you can write x j minus x by x j minus x I T I plus x minus x I by x j minus x I T j. Okay. This is the form that eventually we need to keep in mind. So, what we do is, so what we have achieved by this step, we have been successful in expressing T as a function of some function of x and function of values of T at the node points I and j. So, this we can write is equal to Ni T I plus Nj T j, where Ni is this one and Nj is this one. These are called as interpolation functions or shape functions. This is your trial function or shape functions. Interestingly, you can see one very important property of these shape functions. What is the property? What is the value of Ni? See, these functions are defined at discrete points I and j. Ni equal to what at node I? At node I x equal to xi. So, Ni equal to 1 at node I, and what is it at node j? It is 0 at node j because it will become xj minus xj, 0 at node j. So, in general Ni equal to 1 at the node I and 0 at other nodes, that is the property of a shape function. Now, what we will do is, so this is a trial function. So, you can write this particular expression T equal to Ni Ti plus Nj Tj in a matrix form. How? You can write this as Ni Nj Ti Tj. The objective of this is eventually your unknowns that you need to solve may be written in a vector Ti and Tj, which you need to solve for each node point. So, this we give a name matrix N and this we give a name matrix T. Now, question is, what is the weight function? In the Galerkin's method, the trial function and the weight function have the same form. So, that you can write as N into W, where what is this W? W is Wi and Wj. Conceptually they are like delta Ti and delta Tj. Since W is a scalar, this is same as W transpose. It is just a scalar, transpose of the scalar is scalar itself. So, that is same as W transpose N transpose, because A into B transpose is B transpose into A transpose. So, with that in mind, let us try to write the corresponding form of this equation. So, in place of W we write W transpose into N transpose. In place of K dt dx, see what is K dt dx? Minus K dt dx is the heat flux. So, K dt dx specification of that is basically a natural boundary condition specification. So, we will honor that concept in mind, and then instead of K dt dx we will write this as minus of the heat flux, where Q double prime is the heat flux which is equal to minus K dt dx by Fourier's law of heat conduction. This entire thing should be evaluated between I and j. Then minus dw dx. See, if you are differentiating this with respect to x, remember x is contained within n only. So, you can write this as W transpose, then integral of dn dx transpose into k into dt dx is n trans dn dx into t dx. Okay. So, we have substituted dt dx as dn dx into t. Remember this t does not contain x, these are the just the nodal values, plus integral of now W transpose, then integral of S, in place of W it is W transpose N transpose. Now, since W transpose is arbitrary, it is just a variation you are left with minus of N transpose Q between I to j minus dn dx transpose k dn dx, this whole thing multiplied with t plus integral of S n transpose dx equal to 0. We will simplify these one by one. So, first consider this expression minus n transpose means what? So, we are first considering this term, say term 1. Minus n transpose means ni nj corresponding q, then this entire thing between I and j. So, first you evaluate this quantity at j, then subtract the same quantity at I. So, this is the upper limit minus the lower limit. So, what is the quantity at j? Ni equal to what at j? 0, and Nj is equal to 1 at j. So it will be minus 0, so 1 times the heat flux at j. This is the upper limit. Then the lower limit, Ni equal to 1 at I, so q double prime I, and this is 0. So it is minus q double prime I, sorry, plus q double prime I and minus q double prime j. Okay. Then let us consider the term 2, excluding the minus sign. So term 2, integral I to j dn dx transpose. What is dn dx? dni dx and dnj dx. So what is, so let us write that dni dx, dnj dx, k is there, then dni dx, dnj dx. Term 2 excludes the t also. This is the unknown vector that you have to find out. So we are excluding that from the evaluation of the term. So what is dni dx? So dni dx is minus 1 by xj minus xi, and d nj dx is 1 by xj minus xi. Xj minus xi is nothing but the length of each element, the difference between the x coordinates of the two ends. So this is minus 1 by Le, this is 1 by Le. So let us consider that for the integration. So this will become k by Le 1 minus 1 minus 1 1. 1 Le will come additionally, integral of dx from I to j will be Le. So that Le will cancel with Le square to make 1 by Le. So this is the term 2, and term 3, let us consider this as the term 3. S is a constant, then integral of I to j n transpose dx. So xj minus x by Le and x minus xi by Le, this dx. So you can do the integration, like for the first case you can substitute xj minus x equal to a new variable. So then this will be that new variable, let us say that new variable is y. So it will be of the form integral of y dy from 0 to Le. So, it will be Le square by 2, that Le square by 2 divided by this Le will be Le by 2. So, this will be SLE by 2 and SLE by 2. See, this is a common sense affair. You have the total heat source as S into Le, and that is dumped in the 2 nodes, because if you see that eventually the entire effect of the element is manifested by the behavior of the nodes. The nodes have the sole responsibility of taking care of the burden of representing the behavior of the element. So, whatever is the total, that is now apportioned between the nodes. So, because there is no bias or asymmetry between the nodes, it is just 50-50 share. So, it is a common sense thing, even without doing the integration you can see, but of course by doing the integration you can exactly verify that. Now, let us assemble this equation. So, what is our equation? Our equation is term 1, or rather let us write term 2, take it in one side, term 2 into T is equal to term 1 plus term 3. So, K by Le 1 minus 1 minus 1 1 Ti Tj is equal to this is what you write for each element. Okay. Now, similar thing you can, so this is what you write for each element means just your I and j will be different. So, for the first element I will be 1, j will be 2. So, let us reconstruct that sketch of the elements. So, you had 3 elements. So, 1, 2, 3, 4. This was insulated and this is T equal to TL. So, for the first element I will be 1, j will be 2, for the second element I will be 2, j will be 3, for the third element I will be 3, j will be 4. So, you can write similar equations, similar 3 equations for each of the 3 elements. Question is now how do you assemble it globally so that you get the behavior of the summation of all the elements or all the elements connected together. Now, there are certain important things that you can observe from here. One is that for each element you are getting a 2 by 2 matrix. So, this sometimes is the left hand side is of such a form that you can write it as K into T, where it is capital K, it is different from this thermal conductivity, so, or let us say K bar into T equal to some F. This is the hallmark of a linear system. Just like a linear spring mass system, you have Kx equal to F, where K is the stiffness of the spring. Here similarly this is playing an artificial role of a stiffness, as if you are abstracting the physics from the mathematics. So, because of the mathematical analogy, this appears to be as if this is like a stiffness of the system. This is the as if the displacement. So, here the stiffness is the role of the stiffness is being played by K by Le, which is like the thermal conductance, and these are like the displacements and these are like forces. So, the source term and the heat flux is like a force which is acting on the system. So, it is almost like a spring mass system, and why this analogy with the spring mass system one always gives, because the finite element method was originally developed for structural mechanics by engineers. It was not originally developed for solving heat transfer and fluid flow problems. So, still this type of matrix is known as a stiffness matrix, but we need to keep in mind that it is just a nomenclature. It has nothing to do with the stiffness in a heat transfer problem. The heat transfer problem, the physics of course has nothing to do here with the stiffness. Now, if we need to assemble, so and if we get a 2 by 2 equation for each element, then when it is summed up over all the elements, what will be the size of the total matrix that we will get. So, if it is for 2 nodes it is 2 by 2, then for 4 nodes it must be 4 by 4. So, what we can see here is that we will get a square matrix as a coefficient matrix. So, 4 by 4 So, we just indicate the number of rows and columns by 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 just for our own convenience. So, what we are trying now, so this is the local formulation, we are now trying to globalize it and assemble. So, assembly in the form of a global matrix, that is what we are attempting. What are our unknowns? Unknowns are T1, T2, T3, T4, and right hand side you have a heat flux term and you have a heat source term. So, we need to, so we have prepared the structure of the matrix form, now we have to put in or plug in the numbers. First, for the element number 1, what are the node points which are involved with the element number 1? 1 and 2. So, it is this part of the coefficient matrix that will be activated. Okay. So, what will be the corresponding entries? Let us put the entries here. So, what will be the entry corresponding to 1? That is 1. Then entry corresponding to 2, minus 1. So, as if you were just copying that from the local matrix, minus 1 and this as 1. Right hand side, this is Q1, then this is minus Q2, then this is S LE, this is half and this is half. Okay. Then for the next element 2 and 3, right. So, what will be the activated part? 2 and 3 both from the row and the column side. So, this will be the corresponding active part of the global matrix. So, you have 2 and 3 and here you also you have 2 and 3. Again it will be 1. So, you have, remember you are just linearly adding because it is a summation, algebraic summation, you are summing it up over all elements. So, 1 minus 1 minus 1 and 1. Similarly, so remember for the first case it was like this, for the second case it is this one and Okay, let us complete the right hand side. So, for the right hand side you have this as, so here you have plus q2 double prime, you have minus q3 double prime, here you have plus half and here you have half. Then finally you have this dotted portion 3 and 4. So, 1 minus 1 minus 1 1. Here plus q3 and minus q4 plus half and half. What is an important assumption that we have made? We have made an important assumption that K is a constant, that is the thermal conductivity is a constant, it does not vary from one element to the other. But if it is a composite material, then it is possible that different elements have different thermal conductivities, that is what we have not considered. And the other simplification is that we have considered each element to be of same length, that is not necessary, but just for algebraic simplification we have put it, otherwise different elements will have different length. So, if you assemble this, let us write the final form. So, 1 minus 1 minus 1 2 minus 1 minus 1 2 minus 1 minus 1 1, the remaining ones are zeros. Now, you can complete the problem by imposing the boundary conditions. What are the boundary conditions that we had given? At x equal to 0 the heat flux is 0, it is insulated. So, this is 0, this is one boundary condition, and at 4 T4 is specified. So, since T4 is specified, solution of that is not necessary. But let us say you are using a computer program which does not know that T4 is specified, but it still intends to solve despite the fact that it is specified. So, you can understand the problem is like this: you will be solving T1, no doubt about it, you will be solving T2, T3, no doubt about it, but you do not want to solve T4 because T4 is already specified. But say every time you do not want to change your computer program to tune it with the fact that which is specified and which is not specified. So, even though T4 is specified, you may want to solve for T4 and find out the value exactly same as what is specified, then that will also serve the purpose. Then you can use the same structure for solving the equation, system of equations, no matter whether T1 is specified or T4 is specified. So, how we can do that? So, the final equation for T4 is like this: K11 T1 sorry K41 T1 plus K42 T2 plus K43 T3 plus K44 T4 is equal to something, some right hand side R. And let us say the value of the T4 is specified as T4 star. So, we will play a small trick with this one. What we will do? We will replace K41 sorry K44 because T4 is specified, sorry, K41 remains as it is. We will replace K44 by that plus a large number where L is a large number, and we will replace R with K44 into T4 star, sorry, large number into T4 star, not K44, the same large number. We have to see how large it is. Whenever we say large or small, it is of course from a computational perspective. Remember, it is a computational trick. So, what it will do? So, how can you solve for T4 from here? Say you divide all the terms by K44 plus L. So, it is K41 minus K41 by K44 plus L T1 minus K42 by K44 plus L T2 minus K43 by K44 plus L T3 plus L T4 star by K44 plus L. So, what you want? You want the large numbers to be so large that it is much larger in comparison to all the individual K41, K42, K43 like that. So, when you do that, this term will be very close to 0. So, largeness or smallness depends on the values of the individual numbers. So, you do not have a universal rule for that. Depending on the individual entries of K, you must keep it much larger in comparison to that. So, then this will also be close to 0, this will be close to 0, and this ratio will be approximately 1. K44 is negligible in comparison to L. So, that means if you solve it, you will get T4 equal to T4 star numerically. This approach is known as penalty approach. That is, wherever a value is given, still if you want to solve it from the system of algebraic equations, then what is the approach that you could follow? Of course, if you are doing it manually, you can get rid of the problem by not solving that equation itself. But if you are not doing it manually and if you are doing it through a computer program, then maybe some other point temperature is also specified. So, you need to jumble up with the system of equations and manipulate manually, which you can avoid by making it structured in a way that you can apply it no matter which point, at which point temperature is specified and at which point it is not. So, to sum it up, what we have achieved by this time, we could convert the governing differential equation into a system of algebraic equations. The system of algebraic equation is in the form of Kt equal to F, where the T includes the temperature at the unknown points. So, the next problem boils down to the solution of the system of algebraic equations. So, once you solve the system of algebraic equations, you get the values of temperatures at the discrete points. You no more get a continuous variation, but what you can always do is, if you take the points sufficiently close to each other, you will get a very close variation, so that it will be approximately like a continuous variation. It will be discrete points joined together through some interpolation, but if there are sufficient number of points, it will look like almost a continuous variation. So, one of the important things that remains of course is how to solve this system of algebraic equations. We will consider it or take it up through a separate chapter, not through this particular chapter. So, in the next class what we will do is, so we have seen that how to come up with a system of algebraic equations from a variational formulation. Next class we will see that how to come up with the system of algebraic equations through discretization directly from the D formulation, that is the differential equation formulation, and we will take up an example as a finite difference method which tries to do that. Then what we will do is, we will try to search for some method which sort of is a compromise or something in between in terms of its behavior in terms of the finite element method and the finite difference method, and that method which we will extensively follow throughout this course is the finite volume method. And the finite volume method, we will see that in the limiting cases it can be shown as a particular variant of the Galerkin's weighted residual method, but it may also be it may also be perceived as a control volume based finite difference method. So, there are different perspectives in which it can be looked at, but our important objective will not be initially to detail the finite element, finite difference and the finite volume method, but to understand their basic essential elements, see their important features, and once we learn these basic methods we will go deeper and deeper into the finite volume method for solving the fluid dynamics problems computationally. That aspect we will take up through our subsequent lectures, but in our next lecture we will be starting with the finite difference method, see philosophically how it differs from the finite element method, and then we will identify some plus and minus points of the finite element and the finite difference method, which will motivate us towards approaching for the looking for alternative method in terms of the finite volume method. Thank you.